Imagine a country spending almost $1 trillion to completely change everything about itself. That country is Saudi Arabia. And what's happening right now is one of the biggest money experiments the world has ever seen. For 80 years, Saudi Arabia made money the easy way. They pumped oil out of the ground and sold it. Oil made up 90% of everything they sold to other countries. It paid for 70% of what the government spent. Life was good. The royal family got rich. The people got free health care and education. Nobody worried about the future because the oil money kept flowing. But then something changed. The world started moving away from oil. Electric cars became popular. Solar panels got cheaper. Wind turbines started popping up everywhere. Countries announced plans to stop using fossil fuels. And suddenly, Saudi Arabia had a huge problem. What happens when nobody wants to buy your oil anymore? What happens when your entire country runs on one thing, and that one thing is going away? That's when Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman showed up with a plan. In 2016, he announced Vision 2030. The idea was simple but massive. Transform Saudi Arabia from an oil country into a modern economy with tourism, technology, entertainment, and finance. Cut oil's share of the economy from over 50% down to 30%. Build new cities. Attract millions of tourists. Create jobs for young people. Make Saudi Arabia matter in a world that doesn't need oil. Let's start with the biggest project. It's called NEOM. The price tag is $500 billion. NEOM was supposed to be a futuristic megacity in the desert. Inside NEOM, they plan to build something called the Line. Picture this, a city that's 170 kilometers long but only 200 meters wide. But here's what actually happened. In January, reports came out that the line has been radically scaled back. What was supposed to be 170 kilometers might now be just 2.4 kilometers. That's less than 2 miles. The project appears dead. Media outlets are calling it a disaster. Some reports say they might turn parts of it into a data center instead. Why did it fail? Because building a city from scratch in the middle of nowhere is ridiculously expensive. The costs kept going up. The timelines kept getting pushed back. And eventually, Saudi Arabia realized they couldn't keep throwing money at something that might never work. But NEOM isn't the only mega project eating up cash. There's Chidia, a $9.8 billion entertainment city. There's the Red Sea Project, a $23.6 billion luxury resort area for rich tourists. There's Diriyah, a cultural hub being built around the historic birthplace of the Saudi royal family. And there's the New Murabba, which includes a massive cube-shaped building called the Muqab in downtown Riyadh. Every single one of these projects costs billions of dollars, and all of them are happening at the same time. So where is all this money coming from? The answer is the Public Investment Fund. Everyone calls it the PIF. It's Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, and it controls over $925 billion. The PIF has been spending like crazy. In 2025, it spent $36.2 billion. They bought the video game company Electronic Arts for $28.8 billion. They also own pieces of Uber, Tesla rival Lucid Motors, and hundreds of other companies. They've invested in hotels, airlines, hospitals, tech startups, and sports teams. The goal is to spread money around and build new industries inside Saudi Arabia. But here's the problem. Saudi Arabia is running out of money. Their 2026 budget shows a deficit of 166 billion riyals. That's about $44 billion in the red. They're spending way more than they're making. Why? Because oil prices are stuck. They're not high enough to cover all these expensive projects. Saudi Arabia has been cutting oil production to try to keep prices up. But that means less oil sold, which means less money coming in. To make up the difference, they're borrowing money. Saudi Arabia's debt is now 32.7% of GDP. That's not terrible compared to countries like the United States or Japan. But it's rising fast, and the more they spend, the more they have to borrow. Here's the crazy part. Saudi Arabia needs oil money to pay for projects that are supposed to help them stop needing oil money. The more they try to escape oil dependency, the more they depend on oil to fund the escape. But they're not giving up. In November 2025, Crown Prince MBS met with U.S. President Donald Trump. They announced that Saudi Arabia would invest up to $1 trillion in the United States. The deals cover artificial intelligence, nuclear energy, defense technology, and even F-35 fighter jets. In one day, they signed $270 billion worth of agreements. Saudi Arabia wants access to advanced technology. America wants Saudi money to create jobs and build factories. At the same time, Saudi Arabia is going all in on green energy. They're building a $5 billion green hydrogen plant at NEOM. It's supposed to produce 650 tons of hydrogen every day without any carbon emissions. The facility is 90% complete and should start operating soon. If it works, Saudi Arabia will be a major player in the clean energy economy. By 2030, they want to produce 4 million tons of hydrogen per year and get 50% of their electricity from renewable sources like solar and wind. That's a massive shift for a country built on oil. But there's more. Saudi Arabia just announced they have $2.5 trillion worth of minerals buried underground. We're talking about gold, copper, zinc, lithium, and rare earth elements. These materials are critical for making batteries, electronics, and advanced technology. Saudi Arabia wants to become a mining superpower. They've partnered with the United States to develop these resources. They've opened 11 new mining sites and increased their exploration budget from $21 million in 2022 to $146 million in 2025. The plan is to make mining the third pillar of their economy, right alongside oil and natural gas. Then there's sports. Saudi Arabia has spent over $6 billion on sports since 2021. They created Livy Golf, a rival to the PGA Tour, and poured close to $5 billion into it. They've signed deals with Formula One, WWE wrestling, and professional boxing. And in December 2024, they won the right to host the 2034 FIFA World Cup. Hosting that tournament means building 11 brand new stadiums, adding 175,000 hotel rooms, and upgrading roads, airports, and trains. The cost? Tens of billions of dollars. Some people call this sports washing. They say Saudi Arabia is using sports to distract people from its human rights problems. Others say it's smart business. Sports bring tourists, create jobs, and put the country on the global map. So can this actually work? Can a country that's relied on one product for nearly a century completely reinvent itself? The answer depends on three things. First, oil prices. If they stay low, Saudi Arabia won't have enough money to finish these projects. Second, execution. Building fancy cities is one thing. Creating real jobs and real businesses that last is much harder. Third, competition. Other countries in the Middle East are also investing in technology, tourism, and finance. Here's what we know for sure. Saudi Arabia is betting everything on Vision 2030. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. They're taking on debt. They're making deals with every major country. Some of these projects will succeed and turn Saudi Arabia into a global powerhouse. Some will fail and leave the country with empty buildings and massive debt. This isn't just about money. It's about staying important in a world that's moving away from oil. It's about proving that a country built on one resource can become a country built on many. Right now, we're watching one of the boldest economic experiments in modern history. Saudi Arabia is trying to buy the future. Whether they can afford it, and whether that future actually happens, we don't know yet. But the next few years will tell us everything. Will Vision 2030 be remembered as a brilliant success or an expensive disaster? That's the trillion-dollar question.